Donna E, and I'm an alcoholic. It is so wonderful to be here this morning. It is so incredibly powerful for me to be able to be a part of this fellowship. You know, there's so much success in this room. I always get all emotional over the countdown. This is evidence of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, every single person in this room started out with 24 hours. Started out in the very same place that you are. And look at the success. You know, we're a whole room full of people who are dying of a disease. And Alcoholics Anonymous has given us a new way of life. I'm so moved to be a part of this fellowship and so honored to be asked to participate in this. I want to thank Paul and Mary for inviting me down here today and asking us to join in the convention. I've had just the greatest time. Has everybody had a wonderful time at this convention? I love to see the way the drunks work together, you know, and the way we just dress up really good, you know. This is just so cool. This is so wonderful. I am really new to all of this. I think I've been to maybe 2 conventions in my life. I got sober in Montana. Actually, I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous in Montana. I got sober in Hawaii, but where I was at first exposed to Alcoholics Anonymous, we didn't have a lot of conventions, and I didn't know about speakers, and I didn't know about any of this fancy stuff that y'all do down here, you know. So this is a real new experience for me, and it's an honor and a privilege for me to be involved in Alcoholics Anonymous at all. Believe me, I used to say that I earned my seat in Alcoholics Anonymous by being a loser, you know. I want to tell the new people that are here today, I've been jumped for saying that, you know, but I don't care. That's the way I feel about it. I was in and out of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous for 6.5 years, looking for sobriety. I was in and out of here many, many times. I came into AA. I probably had to raise my hand as a newcomer in an AA meeting maybe 30 times. I don't know. Lots of times. And, I want to tell you, if you're new, that you don't have to do that. You just don't have to do that. But I also want to tell you, if this isn't your first time in the room, just keep coming back. I tell you, it is so amazing to me to be standing up here and to be a sober woman in Alcoholics Anonymous today, and to be able to offer back a little bit of what's been given to me here. You know, everything I have in my life today and everything I know in my world today is a gift from Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's just incredible. It's an incredible journey. I'm just really privileged to be here today, and I want to share with you just in a general way what it used to be like and what had happened to me and what it's like today. And a conscious contact with the higher power, which is the theme of this convention, is very much a part of that. Very, very much a part of that. Let's see, I can tell you that I grew up in Montana. I'm the oldest of 4 children. My mother was 14 when she married my dad. He was 17 years old. And they did so to escape alcoholic homes. They wanted to go somewhere and be not like them. They did the best they could. You know, we left Northern California. I was born in Northern California. We left there and moved to Montana when I was just a little girl, and my parents determined that they were going to have lives that were different than the lives that they had come from. And, they did the best they could to see that would happen. The problem with that is that my father was an alcoholic. And my father was an alcoholic who didn't drink for the first quite a while of his life. And it's something I have in common with him. He had all of the disease of alcoholism present. He had the rage, he had the anger, he had the need to prove to you or the world that he was worth something. You know, and for an alcoholic, to prove that we're worth something, we have to do more. We have to do more than anybody else. We have to do better than anybody else. You know, we have to achieve. It is everything in our world depends upon proving to you that we are worth something. And that was kind of what my dad was about. You know, I want to tell you right away that I really wrestled with whether to talk about this or not, only because, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous has given me an understanding of my family today, and I have no malice whatever. This is, I have nothing but love and compassion for my mom and dad. But this is just part of my story, and I tell it because I've been encouraged to tell it for any other women or any other of us who are trying to get sober who may have come from the same kind of background. I tell this because I thought that this had a lot to do with why I was an alcoholic. It really doesn't have anything to do with why I'm an alcoholic, but it has something to do with why I felt like I was different. I was the oldest of 4 children, and I grew up in a home with a lot of secrets. Lots of secrets, lots of violence, lots of things went on that we knew that you just didn't discuss with other people. And from the outside, it looked pretty good. My dad was a building contractor, and he made a lot of money, and he was an overachiever, and he worked real hard, and it was real important that we had all the right things. But the things that happened in our home was pretty scary. I can tell you that when I was 17 years old, my dad got caught for some of the things that were going on in our home, and he was afraid he was going to have to go to jail. And we left town in the middle of the night, and we moved back to Northern California. We left in February in a blizzard, and I remember that very clearly. I was 17 years old, and at that time I'd never been to a dance or a football game. I had lots of reasons why I believed that I was different than everybody else, and most of it had to do with what I thought you knew that I didn't know. What I didn't know then is that there's a name for that. It's called alcoholism. It's this feeling that I've had since I can remember, that I am not enough. That of myself I am not enough, I don't measure up. You know things I don't know, and I have felt that way as long as I can remember. I also had a very clear feeling that I did not like who I was, and I did not like where I'd come from, and I didn't like the secrets that I carried with me. And so it was real important for me to cover all that stuff up. You know, essentially I'm an alcoholic because I have a disease called alcoholism. You know, which is the physical obsession and the physical allergy and the mental obsession of alcoholism. You know, I am a person who believes that I am not enough, and that alcohol in the way that alcohol worked for me, it made me better. It made up the difference of what I was lacking. I'm always impressed when I hear people talk about, Mike was talking last night about his broadcasting career, and Bob shared yesterday about his career in sales. And I've met people in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings who have made tremendous accomplishments in their lives. I mean, they have like huge educations, and they've been everywhere and done everything. And I just want you to know that before I got into AA, the biggest thing that ever happened to me was I won second place at a chili cook-off in a place called the Bear Creek Saloon outside of Red Lodge, Montana. And thank you. So, you know, my accomplishments were credible. You know, alcohol worked for me. Alcohol worked for me really well. Let's see. I want to try to, you know, not get ahead of myself. One of the things that I kind of struggle with is that because I'm new in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm also new to these experiences, I refuse to let myself think about this before I do it. I always just ask God to let me get out of the way and just say whatever I'm going to say, you know, because I was taught here that Alcoholics Anonymous is the language of the heart. And that's where the heart speaks and the heart listens, you know. And so I just share my experience with you however it comes out today, you know. And I try to stick to the truth. Let's see. When we left Montana when I was 17 years old, and I told you that I really had no life experiences to base anything on. I was asked to quit school, essentially because they didn't want anyone else to find out what had happened in our home. And so at 17 I went to work. And I kind of bounced around for a little while. When I was 19, I met a man, and I married him. And I had 5 children in 6 years and 3 months. I should get a round of applause for that, too. 5 seems to be the number. Everybody I know has 5 kids, you know. I had 4 daughters and 1 son. And I'll tell you what, I was a crazy person. I had not discovered alcohol. But I sure had discovered the fear that I lived with. And I knew all about the shame, and I knew about the secrets. And I was so afraid. I didn't know what to do for those kids. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. You know, I really determined at the time that I met my husband and married him that I wanted to go somewhere and be not like where I had come from. Just exactly like my parents did. You know, that was their intention, was to remove themselves from this alcoholic history and to make a life that was not like the one they had come from. And that's all I wanted. I knew how to dress those kids and how to bathe them and feed them, and I always saw to it that everything looked right on the outside. But I was empty, and I was terrified, and I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. There's a little picture this is like a snapshot of about what I knew about how to be a wife and a mother. And I tell this story because it is just so graphic, and it's so clear to me. I remember it like it was yesterday. When there was at one point in my growing up years that we lived out in the country, and my mom used to buy her eggs from the guy who lived down the road who had chickens. And so in our house, when the egg cartons were empty, you didn't throw them away. You put them on top of the refrigerator. And when she had 3 or 4 or whatever, she'd go down there, you know, buy the eggs from the guy. You put them in. You get the idea. Well, I didn't think about this, really. All I knew was that that's what you did when you had empty egg cartons. You put them on top of the refrigerator. I met a guy. My husband was in the Navy in Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm living down there, and I'm trying to be this little wife, and, you know, I'm trying to do everything. We've been married about 6 months, and I had a huge stack of egg cartons on top of the refrigerator. And he said to me one day, "What are you saving these for?" And I thought, I don't know. That's where they go, you know. That's what you're supposed to do with them. That is exactly what I knew. I wanted to do all the right things. I wanted to make a nice home. I wanted my children to look nice. I wanted to be a good person. I wanted to do better than what I had come from. But I didn't have anything to go by. And, for the longest time, I blamed my parents for the way my life was. But, what could my mother have known about raising children at 14 years of age? It took me many years. It actually took me years in Alcoholics Anonymous to discover that, they were not what was wrong with me. It's amazing to me. I was a very crazy person. I'm a person that is described in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous when they talk about grave emotional and mental disorders. I was real crazy. I was really afraid. I was driven. And I didn't know what to do. I was terrified all the time. I was like very self-destructive, a very depressed person, very, very angry. And I just completely didn't know what to do. About every 6 months during the time that my children were small, I was on the phone to suicide prevention. I would just get to where I couldn't stand it anymore. Essentially, I was a drunk who needed a drink really bad, It was a while before I was to discover that. I would call suicide prevention, and they would send me to the local whoever, Lutheran Family Services or something, and I would go to a counselor for maybe 6 times or 10 times or whatever it took to get a little bit of relief. And as soon as I got a little bit of relief, I stopped going. And that's essentially what happened to me. When I was, my oldest child was 6, and my youngest child was 9 months old. My husband had an affair, and I left him, and I took the 5 kids with me. And that was when I discovered alcohol. I went to work in the bar. That was the job that I could get. I went to work in the bar, and I was 27 years old, and I had 5 little kids, and I had way too much responsibility and a whole lot of fear, and I was running real hard and real fast. And it really, to tell you the truth, up until that time, I did not drink. I had had a drink a few times in my life, a handful of times in my life. But when I was 27 years old and I went to work in the bars, I discovered what I'd been looking for my whole life. When I was a little kid, my parents used to send us to church, and I remember being told that God was love. There wasn't a lot of evidence of love in my life. There wasn't a lot of things going on that made me think that. And I don't know where I got this idea. I'm not sure anybody told me this, but I got the idea that if I was good enough, that God would protect me. I just thought that's the way it was supposed to be. And I had spent about the first 27 years of my life trying to do it right, trying to be good, trying to be better, make it happen. But I am a person that was without power. I just didn't have the ability to make that happen. And up until the time I got my divorce, my whole directive was to try to get on the right side of this power greater than myself that would protect me and allow my life to work for me. And that was essentially what happened. But when I was 27 years old and I went to work in the bar, I found a power greater than myself that made my life work for me for the very first time. And that was alcohol. It wasn't with a particular drink. It wasn't like a day that I took a drink and the lights went on. It wasn't like that. It was a period of a few months. But what I discovered is when I took alcohol in me, I didn't have to be that scared little kid from Billings, Montana who didn't know anything. I didn't have to be the one who'd never been to the senior prom or never been on a date or never did, I didn't have that history. I didn't have the secrets. I didn't have the fear. I had relief from the conditions of alcohol, the pre-existing conditions of alcoholism. And that was something that I carried with me before I ever picked up a drink. I heard a speaker in Palm Springs one time, a woman named Sharon, who said, when I put alcohol in me, it's like throwing electric current to wiring that's already there. And that is something I really knew what she meant. In my opinion, I was an alcoholic waiting for a drink. And I discovered this power greater than myself. There's a real downside to that deal. Alcohol, when alcohol is calling the shots, it decides for me where I work, how I spend my money, how much time I'm going to spend with my kids. It decides for me who my friends are, who my lovers are. It tells me. I did everything I had to do to maintain my right to drink as an alcoholic woman, and I ended up in lots of places I didn't want to be, with people I didn't want to know. And the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that it says to be gravely affected by alcohol, not all of us have to consume the amount or drink the length of time that some of us had to. And it says that this is particularly true of women. And I'm so grateful that it follows, that one statement is followed by the idea that it is particularly true with women. This was my case. I was an alcoholic waiting for a drink. It was like throwing a match in a bucket of gasoline. It was a done deal. And I was off and running. I was a blackout drinker from the very beginning. It also says, the very following sentence after that says that we are often gone beyond recall in a few short years. My drinking career was like that. It was, I had essentially, the way I see it, the thing about being a loser, the reason I even say that is because I had a life that didn't work for me before I found booze. I didn't know how to survive this deal. I didn't know how to be enough to accomplish what it seemed to me that I needed to do, and I was a lousy drunk. I wasn't good at that at all. I was a blackout drinker. I drank in the bars in Red Lodge, Montana, which is a little ski resort town. It's about 2,000 people. It has 14 bars. I drank in bars that had signs on the wall that said, "Please check your guns with the bartender." It was just incredible. When I first moved to Red Lodge, there was one bar in particular that I would never go into. It had swinging doors. Red Lodge is a cold town. We get lots and lots of snow every winter, but it had swinging doors. We didn't need, they just had a huge potbelly stove inside. It went all the time. It had music playing. You could smell it before you got to it, you know. It was one of those places that kind of smelled like stale beer and pine sol, depending on, like, early in the mornings. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know, this smells like home, you know. This place was called the Snag Bar. And the Snag Bar opened at 6 in the morning, and it was infamous in Red Lodge. They had parties in February that were like beach parties. They would haul dump trucks of sand into the place, spread it all over the floor, and people would show up in bikinis and scuba gear, you know, in February. And that was a typical weekend at the Snag. You know, it was just, but I wouldn't go in there for the longest time. I'd walk by there. There were pool tables. There was a poker table. There were people in there from 6 in the morning on, and it was just, I looked down my nose at those people. I just thought I wasn't that bad. Towards the end of my drinking, that was my living room. That's where I live. I can tell you that I'm a member of the Snagette softball cheerleading team. That was my home. That's where I went to open my mail. That's where I went to solve my problems. That's where I had my morning coffee and my nightly drinking. And it was, it just was not a good deal. Was not a good deal. Those children that I had were essentially on their own. I had 4 daughters and 1 son. My son was my 4th child. So I had 3 daughters, a boy, and 1 more girl. And my oldest daughter became more and more responsible. You know, towards the end of my drinking in Red Lodge, I didn't have the ability to decide what I was going to wear to work, much less where I'm going to work, or if we should move, or what bills I should pay. And those responsibilities kind of fell on her. You know, she saw to it that the kids got up and got to school in the morning. She was my enabler. She was the person that I leaned on very much. It made her very, very, very sick. I know that the life I was living those days in Red Lodge, I was really consumed by my own fears. I was consumed by my own shame, and I had a lot of anger. And I really felt like I had been given a raw deal. And I had no idea the way my behavior was affecting the people that I loved. If I had known, I think today that if I had known, I would never have put my kids through that. I adored them. They were the only part of the life that I had going there that made it worth living for me. They were also the only thing that kept me anywhere near planet Earth. I mean, because when they were gone for weekends, I was insane. I was way out of control. And they were the only thing that I knew that really kind of helped me at all. They were my reason. I can tell you that I hit Alcoholics Anonymous for the first time in February of 1981 in Red Lodge. I was living with a guy that was a drummer in a country rock band. And I woke up one morning and he said to me, "Man, you have got to do something about your drinking." And this was like, I was really offended by that, actually, because, you know what I'm saying? I mean, he was not exactly a pillar of the community, you know? And, but I was, he said, "Why don't you go to AA?" I probably owe this guy my life today. I'd never heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. To my knowledge, I had never heard of it. I did not know that people got well there. I did not know that people went there and found out how to put together lives. I went to AA expecting to find some people who were trying not to drink. And I'd already tried not to drink. I'd done my go-arounds of being able to do maybe 30 days. If I was disgusted enough or in enough fear or ashamed enough or in enough trouble, I could stop drinking for short periods of time. But I couldn't sustain that. I went to AA for the first time there, and those people were very kind to me. They really encouraged me. They encouraged me like we always encourage newcomers here. I remember when I got a week, they were just thrilled. You know, they were really thrilled for me. They were so happy, and I thought, God, can I do anything else for you guys? This is not a problem, There were 2 meetings a week in Red Lodge, and I got to tell you, there was a woman there that I asked to be my sponsor. She was the only one who was anywhere near my age. Everyone else was around 100, and they didn't look like they were alcoholics. There was only maybe a half a dozen people in that core group at that time, and the woman that I asked to be my sponsor intimidated me to death, and there was no way that I was going to tell anyone the truth, especially someone that scared me, But that's what I was told that you did here, so I got a sponsor, and I remember that she did try to take me through the steps. I also remember very clearly when I did a 4th step with her that I sat and told her that I was sure that my drinking had not affected my children because I was a bar drinker. Because I didn't drink around them, I thought it hadn't affected their lives. And I remember her looking at me and saying, "Okay." I mean, she didn't try to tell me. I was unsuccessful. I was a loser at that too. I was bouncing in and out of AA for 6.5 years. And I can tell you that when I first hit AA in February of '81, I still had my children. I had a job. I had a car. I was paying rent on a house. I was in serious trouble with my drinking. I knew that I needed to stop drinking. But I didn't, I was a long ways from being done. And I know that over the next 6.5 years when I bounced in and out of AA, I would come back when I was more and more desperate, or more and more in trouble. And the last time I came into AA was the 5th of May, 1987, in Kona, Hawaii. And my children were gone. They had been taken from me. They went to visit their dad for 4 days over Christmas, and they told him that they were afraid that their mom was going to kill herself. And they said, we don't know what to do for her. And so he said, well, you're just going to stay here with me. And you know, my whole directive from the time that they left until I finally got sober was about 2 years. And I tried harder than I ever had to be sober. I went to more AA meetings. I tried everything I could think of, except not drinking. I really thought that alcohol was the problem, you know, and if I could just not drink. And if you are new and you think you're here to not drink, I got to tell you, I would have really shortchanged myself. That was not possible for me. You know, the thing that was causing me the most trouble was sobriety. The thing that made it the most difficult for me to live with. When I didn't have alcohol to change the way I felt, I was that scared little kid from Billings, Montana all over again. And I had all those secrets, and I had a lot of things I didn't want you to know. And, you know, I could stand sobriety just so long, and then I needed a drink. I had to have a drink. And so I would end up getting loaded one more time. And what I really did was over 6.5 years, I proved to myself in my thinking that Alcoholics Anonymous would not work for me. I ended up in Kona, Hawaii after I had lost my kids. I was over there. There wasn't anybody left. You know, there was really nobody left. Even the drummer was gone. You know, there was I hadn't seen my parents in a couple of years. My kids were gone, and I wanted them back so badly. And I was just sure that if I could ever get a year, if I could just get a year, maybe they would come home. And over in Kona, I did get a year. I got 13.5 months. And I invited my oldest daughter over for her 16th birthday. And the entire thing was set up to get my kids back. That's exactly why I did this. I brought her to Hawaii. We had a wonderful time. We went everywhere, did everything. And at the end of her visit, I said, you know, I'm ready to come back to Billings now. I'll come back to where you live. And I want to get a house. And will you come home? And she said no. And all the reason that I had been staying sober was taken away from me one more time. And it was about 2 weeks after she left that I ended up getting drunk again. And it took me 6 more months to get sober the last time. And when I got sober the last time in Hawaii, I had lost it all. I knew that they weren't coming back. I knew I wasn't going to get what I wanted. And I was one angry woman. I would go into AA meetings and tell them off. Up until that time, I really tried to play the AA game. You know, I would talk the talk and you know, try to get along. Just try to do whatever it was I saw you do. But after that, I really lost all my hope. And I knew that it was just a matter of time before I was going to end up drunk one more time. And I was very suicidal. And I was over in Kona. I had about 45 days one more time. And I was really angry. And I remember being in a meeting one night, and a guy raised, at the end of the meeting, the man said, does anyone here have a burning desire? And I raised my hand. I said, yeah, I got a burning desire. I said, I am sick to death of hearing you people tell me how sober is better, because sober does not feel better to me. I am scared to death, and I am miserable, and I am angry, and I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why this program won't work for me, but it just won't work. You know, and everybody in the room just went, right on, Donna. Keep coming back, honey. Oh, I was really angry. And after the meeting that night, I got a hold of this guy, and I said, I don't know why this program won't work for me, but it just won't work. And he said, well, how long are you sober now? And I said, 45 days. And he said, well, what makes you think it's not working? And I said, because this is terrible. I'm miserable. I'm so afraid. I'm so angry. I'm so lonely. I'm so frightened. I don't know what to do. And he showed me one sentence in the 12 and 12 in the 7th step. It said, in every case, pain had been the price of admission into a new life. It was one little sentence. And he said, you know, notice that it doesn't say like most of the time or once in a while or for everybody but you. He said, in every case, pain had been the price of admission into a new life. It didn't make it like that much better. But what it did was I thought, well, maybe this isn't for nothing. You know, maybe this isn't for nothing. I'll just kind of schlep along for a little while more. It was shortly after that there was a woman that came to Kona. who was my Eskimo. This is a woman that literally carried, she introduced me to a way to make a conscious contact with a power greater than myself. Her name was Phyllis C. And she was incredible. She was a type of woman that she loved Alcoholics Anonymous. She just loved AA. There wasn't one part of her life that wasn't about Alcoholics Anonymous and about drunks. She loved drunks, and she didn't care if you were drunk or sober. She just loved you, you know. And she had a real talent for finding like the sickest woman in the room and going right to her. And she just honed in on me, you know. And she came up and put her arm around me, and she said, "Honey, just don't you worry about anything." She said, "You just stay by me, and everything's going to be okay." And she was only over there for about a month. I spent every minute that I could possibly spend with her. She said to me, "You know, if I had a daughter, she'd be just like you. She'd be real sick." And I was actually very honored by that, you know. I thought, cool, you know, she likes me. So I just remember she was so incredible. She was so happy. She was happy to be sober. She was grateful to be a woman alcoholic. You know, she loved this program. She believed in the power that's available in this program. And I remember one day we were laying on the beach, and she said to me, you know, she goes, "Tell me about your higher power." So I started going into this like litany of the churches I'd been to and the philosophies I had studied, you know. And I wanted her to understand how well-versed I was in these things. She stopped me and she said, "Just a minute." She said, "Let me tell you something. Any God that you can understand is going to be too small for your needs." And I thought, wow, I wonder what she means by that. You know, I kept hearing about this God as you understand him. And she's telling me any God that I can understand is going to be too small for my needs. I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, let me tell you this. When you lay down at night and you go to sleep, your lungs inflate and deflate all night long. And your heart beats all night long. And there isn't anything that you do before you go to sleep that's going to make that happen, is there? No?" She said, "When it comes right down to it, there isn't anything that you can do that will add 1 minute to your time on this planet." And I knew that that was true. And she said, "There actually isn't anything you can do that will take 1 minute away." And I knew that that was true. She said, "That is a power greater than yourself." She said, "That is something you have no control over. You did not produce it, and you cannot sustain it." She said, if you wake up in the morning and you're breathing, you're a spiritual being. She said, "God loves you as if you were his only child." And she said, your spirituality is a done deal. I remember that phrase. Your spirituality is a done deal. She said, "You can't lose this." I remember telling her, "Oh, you know, I walked away from God, and, you know, God wasn't the one who left. I was the one who left." And she said, "Wait a minute." She said, "You can't lose your spirituality any more than you can lose gravity. This is something that is outside of you that you have no control." When it talks about the big light, that, you know, I didn't have any physical feeling or any emotional feeling. But I knew that it was honest. I knew that I could straight up say this to God. I could say, "I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you want from me. But if you want to do the deal, then let's go." And that felt right to me, and I did that. And that was the beginning. I used to love, right after that, I would love going into AA meetings telling them about my new higher power. And because I just loved to rankle people, you know. I was very rebellious, and I was real resentful. You'd been staying sober, you know, and I felt like I'd been ripped off. But Phyllis allowed me this little opening here, and I used to tell them that my higher power was my breath, because that's what she said. Your lungs inflate and deflate, you know. So it was my breath. But actually, when I would open my mouth and inhale to say a prayer to God, I could feel the air on my tongue, and it made me feel like God was within. And it says that in the big book. It says that. It says that in the final analysis, that is where he can be found. And it did so much for me not to pray to a God that was out there somewhere who may or may not help me. And my behavior didn't depend on whether or not I was going to get anything, whether I was going to get any results from this. But just an idea of seeking God in an honest way and allowing God to reveal himself to me. And I can tell you the truth that even though I had no clear feeling about what had happened to me those early days, I haven't had a drink. And that is my proof. That is my proof that I have a power greater than myself, and I have a conscious contact. Every morning that I wake up and I'm breathing. And there have been days in my sobriety where I wake up and I do feel lost and alone, and I do feel afraid. I don't go by the feeling. I just can't worry about the feeling. Believe me, I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning last night. You know, my little brain's going, "Hello, we're going to talk about what you're going to say tomorrow." You know? Excuse me, honey. I need to talk to you. And I just have learned to ignore that, because see, that I'm an alcoholic. I'm going to be that way as long as I breathe. I'm going to have this alcoholic thinking. I'm going to have this ego, you know. I'm going to have those things. This is the most incredible. Alcoholics Anonymous is the most incredible thing in the world. I love it so much. I owe everything to this. And I don't care that that I have the alcoholic thinking, and I don't care that I have the ego. I just blow that off. I really just try to show up and open my mouth and to share with you what you have given to me. I can tell you that after I did get sober, then it wasn't very much longer after that things began to get a lot better. Of course, I started to get some relief from the pain of sobriety. I started to have some enjoyment. I started to feel like I wasn't alone. Not always. I am not a person who hit the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and felt like I was at home. Not for many years. To tell you the truth, I sat in AA meetings for 5 or 6 years, and I really did not feel that feeling of warmth and fellowship. I remained very strong with alcoholic thinking that I am different. I am apart from. I am not the same as you. And I'm a very slowly recovering alcoholic. But I have stayed. And little by little, there have been women in my life who have taught me so much about what I need to know to survive and to live a really happy life, to be the type of a person that I want to be today. It was my first year of sobriety that I met God's will for my life. And, I met Terry at an AA meeting over in Kona. And I was really fairly new again one more time. And he had 17 years of sobriety. And I have to tell you the truth, that there was part of me, when I hooked up with Terry and started going out with him, I thought, I hadn't had any success at this deal for so long. I thought that maybe if I stayed with this guy, I could stay sober. And those are not good motives. Those are not good reasons to get involved in a relationship, but that was my thinking, not my conscious thinking. I've lied to myself about that, You have to lie to yourself about those things. We would know that isn't right if you just think it. So, that's one of the pluses of alcoholism. We have denial. They dress it up as something else, But the truth is, what's happened in our marriage has been Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous has changed me and has changed Terry. We've both grown a lot. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to be a part of a relationship today that's built on equal partnership. In my home today, we treat each other with dignity and respect. And I have an incredible amount of respect for him. Terry he has stuck by my side. He's had to have a lot more patience than I have, because I'm new. And, but, he's been sober longer, so I figure it's an even trade. So, I'm really grateful. I'm really, really grateful. I love this man so very much. I respect him and admire him more than any person I've ever known. And it's really neat to be able to live with someone that you think that highly of, and he treats me with dignity and with respect. He lets me do what I need to do. I want to tell you that my children that I lost as a result of my drinking, I did not get back. What happened was they grew up. And even in my sobriety, I worked very hard in Alcoholics Anonymous for the first several years because I really wanted them back. I wanted more than anything in the world, I wanted an opportunity to be able to be a mother to them and to be able to show them the love and respect that I have for them today. And that opportunity is coming in a real, way that I didn't expect. But I can tell you that they never did come home. In fact, even during my sobriety, my relationship with them got worse instead of better. And there was a period of almost 6 years that I didn't hear from or speak to my oldest daughter and my son. They chose not to have anything to do with me, and I had to leave that alone. And Mike was talking about this last night. He was talking about his sponsor saying to him, wouldn't it be nice if they could find you sober, if they ever decide that they want to know you? And that's essentially what the women in AA told me. They said, if these kids ever decide that they want to know you, if you are sober, you will be able to walk through the fear that's going to be involved when you meet with them again. And if you are not sober, another opportunity will be lost. And if they never come back to you and you stay sober, you'll be sober. And it was on that basis, it's been my relationship with my children that have brought me to my knees over and over and over again, because it's the thing that I wanted so much. It's one of the conditions that I had on my sobriety, which is, it's not good to have conditions on your sobriety, but I don't know anybody who doesn't have them. I mean, we get sober and we want a better life. And we have something of an idea of what that better life ought to be about. And I can tell you that I worked real hard in AA to stay sober. I did what you asked me to do. I took the commitments and I showed up and I learned how to be responsible. And I know that when I was about 5 years sober, Aline was my sponsor. And I went to her one day just scared to death. And I was crying and she said, what's wrong? And I said, I'm afraid that it's sobriety that I don't like. Here I am 5 years sober and I'm not happy. I don't know what to do. And she just laughed. And she said that she understood. And she started talking to me about the difference between activity and action. She said, we need the activity in Alcoholics Anonymous to teach us how to behave and how to show up and how to be responsible. But without the action, we don't change. And if we don't change, we're going to do what we did. One more time, we got back into that big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll tell you, it's the best kept secret here. That book that you got today, you should open it and read it. I just won a new big book not very long ago, and I went back in it. My old big book has been chewed up lots, and it's just everything's underlined and highlighted and notes everywhere. I went back into a new one, and I said, I'm going to look, this time I'm going to look for everywhere that it tells me that I need a spiritual answer. And I started underlining just that. And there must be, I haven't counted them, but I'll bet you there are 100 references in the first 5 chapters that tell me that without a spiritual answer, I won't ever have anything. That's the only way that I can change. And, you have given me, Phyllis allowed the door to open a slight bit so that I could make a conscious contact with a power greater than myself. But the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me how to develop a relationship and how to seek and obtain a spiritual answer. I even found in there recently, it said, I thought that if you had asked me even 6 months ago what the stories were about, the personal stories, I would have said that these were stories of men and women telling how they got sober. And that's not what it says. It says that these are personal stories about men and women telling how they made a conscious contact with a power greater than themselves. It says that clearly. It doesn't say that word for word. It talks about a spiritual experience, how they obtained their spiritual experience or a spiritual connection. And sobriety follows. See, we can't live a spiritual way of life unless we're sober. But it says in the Big Book that cessation of drinking is just one step away from a highly strained abnormal condition. If I would have just gotten sobriety, I would have been where I was those 6.5 years. I would have been insane. I would have been scared to death because sobriety is not enough. I have to have a spiritual way of life. Just real quickly, I want to share with you what it's like now. Terry and I have a wonderful marriage, and I'm so happy to be sharing my life with him. We've had some real difficult things that have happened this year. My children, I was allowed to be reintroduced into their life. It was a year ago this summer, and I met my son and my oldest daughter. And my son at that time was 19 years old, and he was this tall, gorgeous, blonde kid, and he was a new member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he was working up on 90 days. And when I met with him in Billings, and I hadn't seen him in 6 years, and believe me, he had changed a lot. His voice wasn't the same. He was this gorgeous, funny, alive young man, and he took me to AA meetings with him, and the first meeting we went to was this midnight meeting, and we come walking in, and somebody said to him, oh, Dan's got a new girlfriend. And he goes, that's my mom, He was so proud of me, and I was so proud of him. I was quite flattered. I was so proud of him, and we spent a lot of time that week that I was in Montana talking, and I could tell that he was in trouble. I could really tell that he was in trouble. I could tell that he didn't have a spiritual answer. He was saying things to me like, Mom, it's really cool because I can go and jam with my friends, and they're smoking a little dope, and they're drinking a few beers, and it's okay. It doesn't bother me. And I tried to share with him what had happened for me. But, we can't help our own children. We cannot help them. And he couldn't hear me. And it was shortly after I left Billings that he started drinking again. And I knew that he'd been drinking. And I talked with him the last time last December. His birthday was December 23rd, and he had just turned 19, and I called him and said, listen, I want you to know that I don't love you just if you're sober, I mean, what you need to do, you need to do. I just know that I can't drink. But I don't judge you. How could I possibly judge you? I mean, I had to do what I had to do. And I said, I love you, and I'm here for you, and if there's any way that I can help you, I would love to be able to do that. And he left Alcoholics Anonymous, and he started drinking again, and he managed to do that for about 6 months, I guess, because this was about in July. And January 24th this year, 10 months ago, he committed suicide. And I want to tell you that this is what happens to us. This is what happens to us. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is full of situations where people committed suicide. Read to the employers. In the first page and a half, there are 3 sites of suicide. There's something in I believe it's there's a solution that says that there are situations that arise out of the phenomenon of craving which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. I always thought that meant that they got drunk again. I thought that until January 24th, when I realized that, this condition of suicide, this is what happens to us. We can't live the way we used to live. It was shortly after that that his sponsor, my mother-in-law, gave me some belongings of my son, and in his things, I have to share this just because it is so important to me. In his things was a list of instructions given to him by his sponsor that he got in the first 90 days of his sobriety. And I want to tell you that the message of Alcoholics Anonymous is very clear. The AA message is written in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and if you don't find it in that big book, it's not part of the message. Now, because we have gone on, this fellowship has gone on for 60-plus years, we have accumulated a lot of information that may be just really wonderful information, but it's not designed to save our lives. And I can tell you that on this list, it said 90 meetings in 90 days, which is a good idea, it's not directives of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. It said no relationships in the first year. It said drink lots of water. It said eat 3 meals a day. It said get up at 6 in the morning. It said open a savings account and give the passbook to your grandmother. It said make sure that your teachers have your grandmother's phone number. It said make sure that you do lots of exercise. I mean, these were wonderful advice. It's just not designed to save our lives. Not one of those things was ask God for help. Not one of those things. And I believe, that we can't give away something we haven't got. And I'm not, I am not angry about this at his sponsor. But what I want to say to you today is that we have to find out what this deal is that we're involved in. I came away from that experience knowing that what I need to do is make absolutely sure that when I'm working with another woman alcoholic, that what I give them is from the big book. Otherwise, I stand responsible for what may happen. I mean, I can have lots of advice on how you ought to live your life. I can think of great things that you ought to do, but it's not designed to save your life. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, in the first 164 pages, it tells us exactly how to recover. It tells us exactly how to establish a conscious contact with a power greater than ourselves that will solve our problem. And if we don't have that, we're just one step away from a highly strained abnormal condition. And that ain't good enough. I don't know whether my son, ever heard the message of AA. I don't know whether he would have been alive if he did, I know that the acts of man are not the acts of God. And I know that his free will, that he did what he needed to do. But I know that the day that he took his life, he had no substance in him. He could not go on the way he was living. And he came to AA, and he did what he was told to do, and it didn't work. And I know that that's what I thought for a long time, too, until someone introduced me to what is the AA message. And it is written in the Big Book. This is such a wonderful, wonderful fellowship. And, the idea that any of us ever gets sober or stays sober is a bloody miracle. I mean, it comes from God. It comes from a power greater than ourselves. I can't fault. I'm not saying if you would have had a better sponsor, how can I say that? But I can say that our program is designed to produce a specific effect, and it promises me that. For myself, I can tell you that this last 10 months has been a very dark time, and there have been times when I did lose. I lost a feeling that I was as connected as I had been. But thank God for the women in AA who have taught me how to behave, and for this program who tells me what I will do and what I will not do. And I am coming through that time. God has done for me what I can't do for myself. And, this is evidence to me that we can stay sober under any and all conditions, and that this gift is a gift. I'm so grateful for my sobriety today, and I'm really grateful to be able to share with you. Thank you.